Do you remember that sound from when if you are old enough, used to use a radio and you used to hear a lot of white noise crackling, and then every now and then you'd hear the radio host speaking and you would try and make it out, but you think, maybe I need to turn the FN dial slightly in order for me to understand what's going on. Do you remember that if you're, let's say, over 30? And what was happening there? The signal wasn't quite right. It wasn't quite tuned so that you could hear the voice of your radio host, so that you could hear their voice clearly and drown out the background noise. Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this video and what that means for you as a speaker in being clear in your communication. So let's go back to that situation. So you're trying to find the radio channel and it's all, you can't hear anything, right? And what ends up happening? Well, if you never actually get that tuning right, then you just tune out. You either turn the radio off or you just decide, okay, well, it's not worth listening to. And think about it. Did anything change in the actual content of the radio host? Actually, they probably had something really important, really fascinating to say. But because it was so hard to make it out, you decided, you know what? This is just not worth listening to. So I want you to keep that and think about when you are speaking about your work. This is exactly what your audience is going through when the signal to noise ratio, which is an acoustic term that we use in audiology, is not right. When you have too much noise in your signal, then your brain struggles to make it out. It's just like when you are in a room with lots of speakers in the background and you're trying to listen to one person, your brain is constantly having to filter out, what do I want to listen to, which is the signal versus the noise, everything else. Your brain is actually really good at separating the signal from the noise. It's been doing it basically your whole life without much conscious effort on your part. But the truth is that that comes at a cost. It is taxing to have to do that. It takes a lot of cognitive power to be able to separate what's desirable and what's relevant from what isn't. And guess what? We don't like to do what's tiring by definition. If it takes too much effort, well, then we naturally tune out. So now let's take that concept and let's apply it to your presentation. So your core idea, whenever you present, is your signal. That's the thing you want your audience to pay attention to. And everything else that does not add to that idea is noise. And that's when you can think about the over-explaining and the details and the background and the caveats and the fringe cases. All of those things become noise if they're not helping the audience understand your main and best idea. And then what happens is the more noise you add, the harder it is for your audience to actually care. So let's take an example of a noisy sentence. So what we've been looking at here over multiple teams over the past quarter is that there are several variables that go into this result that we have found. What? Yeah, it's so effortful. What exactly are you trying to say? So let's contrast that, where you don't even know really what the point of that sentence was, with high signal, which says, the data shows that by following this method, it will reduce our costs by 30%. Here's how. In the first example, you're looking for the information. You're trying to find what the person was actually trying to say. And in the second, you're like, okay, this is the result. This is why I care. You're not leaving them guessing. They're not trying to search for the answer. You've given it to them clearly, plain and simple. And I'm going to say something that might rub a couple feathers, but I think it will be extremely helpful, is that a lot of times people add all of this information, all of this noise, to make themselves feel and look smarter. But the reality is you don't need that. You already have the knowledge. Stand firm in the fact that you have it, and then remove all that doesn't add to your main idea so that the audience can have crystal clarity in the knowledge too. So the takeaway here is stop trying to prove how much you know by how much you say, because it's having the inverse effect. And instead, Start making it easy to hear what matters. Because I'm assuming you have information that is of value to your company. And when you get really good at condensing that and making it easy to digest, you'll be the obvious candidate for promotion. You add value and you are clear and easy to understand. Of course, they're going to promote you. So here's what I want you to do the next time you speak. I want you to ask yourself, does my audience have to strain to understand the main point? Okay? Ask yourself that question. And then the second is get really good at subtraction. What do I need to remove so that the signal becomes far higher to perceive than the noise? Because the truth is that that is where clarity is found. Your signal you already have, that's the expertise, that's the knowledge. What you need to do is reduce the noise, and that's what will cause people to lean in, pay attention, remember, and understand what you have to say.